Well, hello, and welcome to another Discover Headless Tech interview from headlesscreator.com. I'm Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, feel free to email me, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Today's episode is all about streamlining content governance, and that is so important when implementing any kind of headless CMS or composable technology. And we're focusing on content governance and collaboration across multiple experiences. My guest today, she is Zoe Ventura Martinez, Senior Solutions Engineer at Contentful. But before we get to the interview, you know how this works. I'm going to tell you real quick about headlesscreator.com. Go get your free account there. You'll have access to this live stream right after as an on-demand version, but then you also have access to pretty much everything that's in the Discover Headless Tech course, which includes a whole bunch of podcast interviews. It includes a bunch of tutorials, bonus materials, and then of course you'll have access to pretty much all of our courses. So you see we have tons of courses on pretty much any headless or composable topic you can think of. So go get your free account. You won't regret it. Now, with that said, what we're going to do is, for those of you watching live, if you have any questions for Zoe, feel free to put them in the chat, and now we'll go ahead and ask her. So having said that, let's bring her in. Zoe,
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, Marcelo. Hello, everyone.
I'm glad to have you here. Now, where are you located?
I'm in London, Southwest London, United
You're
Kingdom.
in London, but originally you're from Spain, right?
I am from Valencia. I've been
From
living here
Valencia.
for 11 years already.
Vamos a hacerlo todo en español esto. So everybody's going like, what? Well, not everybody. Some people
Imagine.
understand, right?
Imagine.
Exactly. So, hey, I'm glad to have you here. This is a very important topic, governance, right? Many times when people get together and to implement a headless CMS project, they don't think about the governance that goes along with this and the collaboration, meaning from the authoring perspective. So we're going to be chatting all about that. And I'm glad you're here to clarify some of those issues. Before we do that, I'd love people to get to know you a little bit more. Maybe give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Sure. So as you said, I'm currently working at Contentful as a solution engineer. I've been at the company for a little bit more than 2 years. But prior to that, I've worked in the SaaS world for 10 years. However, I studied translation and interpreting at university, and I've also, been into teaching foreign languages, and I've also tried project management from some time, and dived into learning and development. So a lot of many different topics, but that they all sync together a little bit as well.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a great other topic is translation localization in the implementation of multiple experiences. What languages did you translate besides obviously Spanish, right? And or taught? What else? Do you have other languages or mainly Spanish?
Yeah, no, mainly French, English into
Oh,
Spanish, also
okay.
Catalan. Mm,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, Catalan is a different dialect of Spanish in Spain, correct?
a different language.
It's completely a different language.
It's
Okay.
completely a different language.
I just showed my complete ignorances on languages here. So
It's okay.
yeah, cool. All right. So I want to start by, instead of jumping into all the issues and challenges, and let's start by setting sort of a bar so everybody we're on the same page, and let's define content governance. Explain to us when we're talking about all this, what do we mean by content governance here?
So for me, content governance is like the framework that organizations can implement to guide or to set the standards from the content creation process, no, from the ideation of the content, publication, of course, and also deletion of that content or archiving of it if it's necessary. So it should have also the different tools, the different resources, the workflows that all of the stakeholders that are involved in creation of content, all these that they need, and that can provide those standards for them to create or produce great content.
So, and I mean, I know the answer to this, but why is this so important in a company? And why do so many companies not put that importance on this?
Yeah, I think it's important because you can't escape it. Okay,
Right.
even those companies that today they are not spending time or effort on thinking about it, sooner or later they will have to. No? If you're a smaller company, you have perhaps a less mature content strategy, you have questions, no? Or once you want to expand or scale, you will find those challenges. You will have to sit down and decide, how do we scale to a new market, or how do we launch this other product? If you're a company that has already experience in that, next time you want to launch or produce a new customer experience, it would be good that you sit down, decide about your content governance, so then you don't repeat the same errors, or the opposite, you learn from those best practices to make it even better and faster. No?
Yeah.
And those very well established companies that are very innovative, still they have much more complex setups, configurations, and they can't keep going on business as usual with what they have done before. As the more they are progressing, or the more they are expanding, the more complex it is. So they really need a content governance in the end.
Now, governance, it requires a lot of people to implement, right? Not just, I mean, there's the technical aspect. It's like, how do we implement this technically in our CMS, our composable systems? But then there's also the business side, right? It's like, what are our business procedures? Then there's the stylistic side, right, of governance too. How do we follow, how do we make it consistent? That's part of governance as well. So it
Mhm.
requires really, like, who should be involved in the governance from a team perspective in a company?
In fact, everyone that has a say, I'm not saying every individual contributor, but every stakeholder of all those teams that have an impact in content. I love that you asked me this one, because it's something we often have to bring up, like bring other people, bring all those that will have an impact or will have a say, let's say. And because if they are not heard, sooner or later the troubles they're experiencing, or no, the good practices that are not shared, are not known, then we won't sooner or later we'll find them and we'll have to overcome them. Okay, so yes, I agree that it's not only from the technical side or the branding side, or styling, that those I think are quite often considered, but also anyone that is involved in the content team, and also not to forget those perhaps subject matter experts that
Mm-hmm.
often contribute to content. I'm not saying you bring all those lawyers that create the legal content, but someone representative from those workflows, so then they have a say on it.
I think that's because my next question was going to be, who do you find, because you work with lots of companies, right? Who do you find that is often ignored and not brought into these meetings that you feel should be there, but often they're not invited for whatever reason? Because
I
I
think
have sort of my own answer for that, but I'd love to hear yours
yes.
first.
Very varied. Sometimes it's the content team, the
Right.
day-to-day one.
That's my
Uh,
answer too. The authors.
yes, the authors, and then other times, as I said, those external authors. That because this is not their main job to create
Mm-hmm.
content, but they are participating because they are the experts on whatever topic. Then no one brings them in, or no one brings the person that is managing that relationship.
Yeah, that's really important. So you believe that we should have some, maybe a content committee or something where you have a representative where all the ICs meet and talk to the representative, and the representative goes to these meetings, right?
Mhm. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, of course, this maybe comes later on the conversation, but having a content governance program, let's say, now today, let's say we do all the homework, we get it right. It doesn't mean in a year you wouldn't revisit it. Like it's something I think needs to be
It's
iterated
continuous.
with the changes that your company will have. No, you will have new projects, you will have new goals, scopes, and
Yeah.
new resources involved that perhaps at the beginning you were not using external authors and now you're considering them. So it's something that needs to be revisited to
Yeah.
to guarantee the success of it, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. Now, I mean, the topic today is about content governance and collaboration, right, across multiple experiences. And that's the key here, because it isn't just like the web and we're done.
Hmm.
There's multiple experiences, and we're not even talking about locales in multiple
Yeah.
countries and all this stuff. So, from a collaboration perspective, give us, what do we mean by collaboration? Who's collaborating? What people from what departments, and what should we be considering?
We take for granted that you're collaborating well within your team, your content team. No, that's the foundation of it, obviously.
Right.
But yes, when some businesses either they decide to launch a new experience or a new market, a new product, no, they often they have a separate team working on it. And what I find is that they often work as if they were separated businesses, and that they are even competitors because they compete in their own organization for being the best, no, or getting the best results. So I kind of feel they don't work towards that collaboration because they want to keep their goodies for themselves and also their failures for themselves. While if they were collaborating among themselves, they could, for example, reduce a lot of duplication of content or efforts. They could also, the collaboration can also make it easier for connecting those different experiences or those different products, so the end user has a much better experience. We all
Right.
have lived, we all have an account with whatever company, energy company, for example, and the experience while you get the first time as a new customer or potential customer is very different as when you are a customer, as when you call on the phone, as with your mobile app. Is totally different experiences. No, they are not all synced together. So for the end user, in the end, is what the ones that will benefit the most of it.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because, and this shows sometimes how when it doesn't work. Like for example, I'll get from in my internet company, I'll get here's a huge discount for you, but then it says it's only for new customers, right? Why would they even send that to me since I've been there? Now that just makes me mad that I can't get that discount that they're
Mm-hmm.
new. But that just shows, right, how you've got to put in the right content governance there so that stuff doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about the looks of it. We all have
Right.
also visited sites or a secondary site of a company, and then it looks poor, and you doubt, is it the real one? Is it a scam? Uh, One example here often is the career sites of many businesses.
Uh
That
huh.
if you look at, I often try to browse different sites of the businesses I'm talking to, and they are often like a second class site.
The
We have
career
to have
section.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to have it, but it's not as exciting as the marketing side or as the product side or as your portal. It's like, okay, we have to have it. There's a list. It's a boring page,
Yeah.
but sometimes it makes you doubt. Like for me, sometimes I visit them. It's like, am I visiting the right one? I try to go
Right.
again to the original one to check, because the look and feel is not the same.
And if you think about it, it's just as important as the rest of the site because you're trying to attract the right talent and
Yes.
convince them, right, that this is the company to work for. And they're
Hmm.
not doing that through that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
definitely. So when we talk about multiple experiences, let's define that too. What do you mean by multiple? What are multiple experiences in the context of this conversation?
It could be many things. It could be multiple customer journeys, no, on a site, as several that I mentioned already, no, as a new visitor or as an existing customer, or as a business, no, B2C, B2B, for example. Those could be within the same product. It could be different customer journeys to arrive to your content. Okay, then other types of experiences have to do if you sell different solutions, different products. No, for each of them, you will offer a different experience because your audience is different and your solution as well. No? And then again, it happens the same if they are markets. You hopefully are adapting to the market and not offering a copy of the original one, and that experience should be adapted to that market. And we all know also about brands. No? A company that manages multiple brands, of course, is not a copy paste of the first one. Each of them, they should have their identity, their own look and feel, their own offer. However, keeping some consistency. I think that's key.
So, expanding on that, how do we have companies adjust their content strategy to adapt for all of these regions and brands? Let's say it's a company that just has one region, one brand, but now they either got acquired and now they're part of a bigger thing, or they acquired and they have more, or they're just expanding. How can they adjust that content strategy and go from the we just have this brand in this region to now we're in multiple regions, we have multiple brands, and we have multiple experiences that we, like you mentioned, that we have to take out.
Hmm. Um, I think they probably need to understand the uniqueness of each of those regions or each of those brands. Um, Either because they launch it themselves or because they acquire it. So they need to sit down and understand what they have to offer, what's their tone of voice, their brand style, and all that. And then if they have had already the experience of launching a market product already in the past, they can learn from it, learn what went well, what didn't go right, and then just take note of that, think of the potential improvements, so when they launch those new ones, then it should be an easier process, because they are not repeating what they have experienced. But I think it's a matter of understanding what is different to keep it, okay, but with the benefit of whatever we already know from another brand, from another market, and then try to implement it in the next ones.
But that can get really complex, right? Especially when we're dealing with different regions, different parts of the world that may, or even within the same country where you may have different cultures.
Hmm.
How do you adjust and maintain a governance around that, right? When you have maybe many cultures or different languages, like in Europe, right? You go
Hmm.
across many countries. Even in the U.S., we have many cultures, right? And across the United States, that how do you manage? It just seems like it would be a pretty hard thing to do. Any
Well,
any tips or best practices for that?
I think the key is to set up standards. No, what is the standard for the overall company in, let's say, Europe, no, or North America, as our company brand style, or the model or the structure of the different pages or touch points that we offer, no? And then they will adapt to that brand, to that market. But you need to set up standards, and it's part of what content governance does. No? That you sit down to reflect what should be the standard across the organization, and then how much flexibility we can give to each of those other business units that are also having their own, that are different.
So let me ask you on the standard thing, because in the reality, like, let's just talk on the content authoring side.
Mhm.
Authors start content creation various ways. Some can go into Headless CMS. Others will start with like a Google Doc, right?
Mhm.
Or a notepad or whatever it may be. So is setting these standards forcing people into a new way of doing, or is setting these standards for governance, recognizing how people work, bringing that into and trying to, or is it a blend of both? You know what
A
I mean?
blend, a total blend. Because yes, in fact, it's something I should have mentioned at the beginning. It doesn't mean you're erasing everything that has been done so far and you start from scratch with whatever someone decides is the best way to work. Because they come from another company. We did it this way. It worked. Let's do it this way. No, it's a matter of listening. No, the processes that are there, evaluating which ones are still useful. No, which ones are adding more time, are adding more complexity, they're useless perhaps, and then trying to get rid of those. And so it's a mix. I think I don't think it necessarily means get rid of the creation of the drafting content in
Right.
Word. It's whatever works better for your teams,
I,
but
I think it, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
with that standardization of the processes, I think it includes the workflows that I haven't mentioned, but that's it. It's trying to work on workflows that either we know have worked well previously, or we're gonna just test them. Let's see what works and let's evaluate. Here it just added more complexity, or it just added more time, or it's just added more people unnecessarily. And then we reiterate, let's readjust those workflows then.
And I want to emphasize that to do that, you really have to have the right people on the table to know how they work. So, because I've seen it in many implementations for governance, where basically you have a team that is completely disconnected from content creation, mandating or designing this governance, and then it's implemented, and then you get all the authors and content creators going like, "What is this? This is not how we work. We don't start here. We start there." How do you break down, because this is part of that collaboration, not within the content creation, but before the collaboration across teams and the silos? What are some tips to get those communication channels going?
First, admitting that this is a need, or that the goal is to have content governance. No, and content governance that comes from every part that needs to be governed, not a dictatorship, because the dictatorship won't work. No, if I impose this way of working, these workflows everywhere, some might work well in a market or in a
Right.
region, but doesn't mean everywhere. So first, they all need to believe in this, no, and in this exercise, because it's going to take effort and time. And then a month ago, I did a content strategy workshop, and one of the exercises was to put down all the customer journeys, a step by step of each of the customer journeys, and then, but really, no, physically, okay, we go here, we do this, we find this screen, no, everything with post-its, and then evaluate in each of them what is positive, no, and what is negative, what is blocking us, and then with the blockers, try to see what could be a potential solution, what other business units are doing in similar situations, and also from the things that we think work well, trying to gather them the same, so we can then replicate them in other customer touch points. Okay.
Yeah.
And the second exercise after that, that can come with the iteration of the content governance, it's to then mix the people involved in those different markets, or products, or regions, or brands, and then mix them and put them in front those customer journeys of another brand of them, so, or another region, so they evaluate it, they say, yes, here are the positive points I see, and these are the negative ones. So then it's a fresher mind with a mindset of another market or another product, so they can then add their point of view and learn also the good things. That's a
Yeah.
great way to get lessons learned as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, how do we manage, or how do we balance autonomy versus governance? One of the positives for professional content creators is like, look, we have some rules, but give me some, autonomy to work my way. How do you strike that balance?
That autonomy is key. If you want to be authentic, no, as a brand or as a product in a market, or in one of those touch points, in those experiences that we were saying. So I think that's key. I think often what happens is the opposite. There's not enough independence, or enough identity given to those. And in my opinion, the balance is when what you share, what you impose from corporate, or across all the different regions or brands, are the things that are going to just add value. No? Like, for example, a structure of the content, or some workflows, no? Some approvals, or some tooling that we've seen works quite well here and there. So hopefully, what is shared across, or what is part of those standards, can only bring positive things. It shouldn't bring block, no, it shouldn't
Right.
make a struggle. However, something that you mentioned at the start, and I have also seen it, sometimes some of those business units, some of those stakeholders would be really against new ways of working, just because of the fear of change. They think they have a solution, or a setup.
Mm.
It's not amazing. Okay, we admit what it doesn't go well, but maybe implementing something new is going to be worse. So I prefer to stay with what I have.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, so what are some common roadblocks and challenges in implementing, content governance that you ran into, besides fear and change, which
That's
that's typical in anything for humans,
that's
right?
the main one.
Right.
Second one, it probably is making that real evaluation of what we have now, no, in each of those markets, in each of those, the setup we have, the workflows we have, no, the structure we have, the processes we have. So really evaluating those to the detail, so we can really get know what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes, in fact, when I have a first kind of calls with some customers, or some potential customers, they tell you, oh, I'm struggling with this and that, and they are tiny things. They never say everything, because the more we keep speaking or asking about how they do things, or presenting the solution, then they're like, oh no, but that blocks with this other thing that we do. They haven't fully reflected on that exercise that I was saying of having all your customer journey and then really understanding from A to Z, why are we having each of those steps?
But how
Because
many companies really have that? I mean, I've worked with big
yeah,
companies and I've asked, hey, where's the customer journey map? And like, what? Like, are you kidding me? We have no, and that just seems very typical of companies. That seems like the last thing.
or sometimes having some process in between that they don't know. Someone had it, included it there. That
Yeah.
person is not there anymore. And then when you ask them why it is like this, and it's like, I don't know. It was there already when I arrived. So it's also the questioning of why do we have these things? Are they still valid? No. Um, yeah, probably not many companies have it to that extent, but I'm sure they will all benefit. Even if it's, I guess the ideal, no, it would be to have it for everything. But let's start with one. With the next one we do, let's really conceive it consciously from a start, and
Well, I
then
love you said that because most companies think, oh, we got to go big means we got to do everything right now. And then never gets done, right? Or by the time it's done, it's already outdated and you have to change it. But you said just start with something small, which is the best way to do it, right? So give us some strategies there about picking, like what would you, how can they figure out where to start, and how do you implement this governance in small pieces and still maintain that consistency that governance is supposed to bring?
so some often I see customers implementing either a new project that they are going to launch that is totally unknown for the customer, so it doesn't hurt if they fail. No, they are not going to fail because they are doing it consciously. But in their minds, it's like.
Yeah, yeah.
Just in case, a new project, or they are revisiting or reviewing a new part of their site, or something that they had. Sometimes they have it all together in one website and they start to wanting to separate, let's say, markets. No, if they started with serving a couple of markets, one of them gets more powerful, so then they want their own site for that market. Or the opposite, some companies had several websites for all these different touch points, careers, B2C, B2B, and then they are lost in, they can't keep up with the consistency, etc. So then the project is to bring them all together, but that's it. They don't do it all in once. Let's do. They start with one of them, since they are going, or they are planning to migrate. All of them. They just pick one and then they start with that project. And then it's putting down the process of has it worked up until now to create the content that way, and how can we do it better this new way that we're planning.
I love picking a small section where, like you said, you're not going to fail. But if it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out, it becomes a learning experience for the next thing, right? And there's minimal risk, right? There's always risk, but there's minimal risk. For example, like you said, the career page, it's probably going to be one of those lower risks areas, right? Versus the customer pages where you're trying to sell. I think that's a great strategy to do that. But then it becomes sort of this iterative thing, right? Where you implement, you learn what went wrong, and then you adjust and implement on the next one, I would assume.
Yes, and you learn also what went well. Let's not
And you
forget of
learn what
this.
went well,
uh,
exactly.
because by learning that, the more you're iterating with the new projects, new add-ons, then you are hopefully the list of best practices is growing. So then it really decreases the time to launch new projects on new markets, no? Because we have learned and we have accumulated all those best practices.
Yeah, definitely. What are some like legal risks or compliance considerations? And I'm gonna give a disclosure here. We are not lawyers. Don't listen to us. We don't know what we're talking about. Okay, disclosure is done. But what are some legal risks that people should consider when implementing governance, or should consider if they don't implement governance?
One example, and this in fact comes, I already saw it in my previous role. I was working for One Trust, which is a privacy management. Well, one of their solutions is for privacy management, and one of the one of the common use cases is, let's say we have multiple experiences or multiple brands, of course, in all of our sites, all of our mobile apps, we have the privacy notice, we have terms and conditions. Okay, a big struggle of companies that are managing multiple sites or multiple touch points is to find where they have all that. So to make sure they have the most updated version of that. Okay, that's a big struggle to find
Well,
it.
and I want to, so I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to point out there, that's a perfect example of governance to make sure you have the latest because of a legal issue, right?
Yes.
That's single source of truth. And the only way that could happen is if you have proper governance in place to enforce that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. To
Sorry,
you
I didn't
know
mean to
who.
interrupt you, but I wanted to bring that, that out.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great point.
You need to find it where it is. You need to make sure who is it the right person to make these changes. No? Who has the last say? Let's say maybe it's
Right.
our internal legal for that document, and then to update it everywhere. So that's a common one. And if you think, I say privacy notice and I said terms and conditions, but it could be, I don't know, terms and conditions of a specific offer, no, that I can have there. I forgot to update it in this microsite that I have, who knows where. And then a customer sees it, buy this product or this service, takes a screenshot, and then later on tells you, no, but I adhere to these ones that were
Right.
published when I
And
bought
I've
your product.
personally experienced that in website
You
services I
see,
use.
of course,
Yeah.
no, that happens more than we thought.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of the positive outcomes of good governance is the ability to automate processes, right? Do you have any examples of how we can automate? I mean, we have so much is going on now with AI and stuff. I mean, is a positive outcome of governance, streamlined governance, is the ability to automate? And if so, can you give us some of those examples?
I think since, the idea is to reflect on the best workflows that can be implemented. And of course, those workflows to be customized to your market or to your specific team. Part of those workflows in the end, you can see the similarities or the things that happen at the specific stages and then try to automate. Like, for example, assigning. No, we move from stage 1 to 2, let's say, no, from after design to the drafting, we draft, and then maybe we need it to send to approval. Why do I have to copy paste it in an email, notify this person, or maybe a whole emailing list of people that should approve this? So, for example, notifications, assignment of certain tasks, all that can be automated, no? Or publishing changes, little changes, or well, they don't have to be little, but we understand that often the authors are just changing, updating little things here and there, and then that's it. You can just shoot it to your CI/CD tools and then publish it straight away, not having to do manual work. So part, I think, of the advantages of having that governance framework is to reduce the manual work.
Yeah, and that's a big portion, especially when you run into content that is outdated. It may not be legal ramifications of having outdated content, but it's definitely bad customer experience ramifications of having, for example, if you have a help site that is teaching your customers about your product, but in your help site you have documents that are completely outdated from what they really use. Now you have a customer support issue, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how do we prevent something like that?
One, obviously, having centralized all that content.
Yeah,
Okay.
single source of truth again. Yeah.
Yes. And involving product in our content governance as well. Not that they have to create those articles or anything, but
Right.
that the team that is creating those help articles is really connected and synchronized with products. So be ready for, we're launching it tomorrow. Tomorrow we also have a help article for this new change, new capability. Okay.
So part of governance is really communication plan.
Mhm.
Part of that is how do we communicate across all these different teams so we all know what's going on and we can make those updates when this changes here.
I don't know if it's part of the governance or part of the content strategy,
Mm. Or
but
both.
anyway, there needs to be tools to facilitate that exchange. And perhaps, in fact, while your author is creating that help article, maybe we need to involve someone from product to evaluate, to review that. No? That would be an example of a subject matter expert that reviews the content, validates it, and then, yes, we can publish it.
So what role does like headless and composable play in all of this? Obviously, like if somebody is watching right now and they're on a legacy CMS, right? I mean, how can headless and composable facilitate this collaboration that we're talking about and this governance that we're talking about?
So headless on one side, it will allow you to reshare some of the content. No? Like part of the content that was created, let's say, for a web experience, could be reused for my mobile app, no, or for a kiosk that I have on my shop. So the ability, the fact that you're not fixed into one presentation, then it will allow you to facilitate that multi-experience that we were talking before, and even the omni-channel ideal. Okay, then composability will, because it breaks down your content into different components, different structure, a defined structure. It enables you for connecting, for example, to other third-party systems that are part of the content creation, for example. And also it can enable you to just send for review this specific component of my article and not everything. Okay, so composability will give you a structure that will facilitate that collaboration, either with other third-party systems or with other stakeholders or people that work around content.
So to that effect, because we have headless, content modeling is basically the basis, right, of everything. You start with content modeling. How is that affected, or how is governance affect the content modeling, specifically when we're talking about this multi-experience omni-channel, right?
Mhm.
How, when do you start talking, when you're designing the content model, when do you start talking about the governance around that?
In multiple ways. One way is in understanding in each of our different content structures or models how they can sit in my various experiences. Okay, so what of those components can be reused across, and understanding that dependency, or not dependency, but that relationship into those different components. That on one side. And then on the other side, it's of course understanding who should be responsible of each of those components. No? Let's say an example I often have with customers when I speak, SEO metadata. No, perhaps I have a person that it's or a group of people that are the experts on SEO. That is part of my model, but is the only these people that can publish it or can make changes. Let's say, but my other authors are going to reuse that metadata, are going to use it. It's part of their, the content entries, or the content that they can utilize, but they are not the ones that own it, for example.
Yeah, totally. So, from a tools perspective, are there any tools, whether tools in the third-party tools out there or custom tools that you feel facilitate both collaboration across these multiple experiences and the creation and even implementation of governance?
I don't want to suggest any specific tools for the workflows or the governance of those that are listening, because it will depend also on what tools are they currently using, what works better for them. Okay, but I've seen some custom deployments of custom systems or tools, like for example having a dashboard where you can see the content created by other regions or by other business units. So as an author, if I see that there's a new help article on how to do X, then I can write an article that it's about that topic and then include my help article there for further reading. No? For example. So that's one idea, no? Having a place where, as an author, I can access also or see kind of the latest content that it's created in other business units, other markets. Another tool that I've seen for those that are very visual and need to visualize perhaps that structure, that the model of the content, then that's it. Some tools that will help to visualize it, I don't know, in bubbles or however you
Right.
like to
For
represent
example,
them.
I use Miro board, right? Which,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
So you could have that in a way that for you it's easier to understand how the model, how the structure works, those
And to
relationship.
explain, right? That which is very important.
Mhm. And then because it's a better tool for me, perhaps to the way I interpreted the things, then I can learn from what my other markets are doing. No, what do they have in the structure, and then I can copy, and replicate it in my own.
Yeah,
Things like this,
totally. Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
are very custom to the needs
Sure.
of the each of organization. In one they need to visualize this, in the other one they wanted to see what other teams are doing, so kind of they can sometimes they can copy the topic and then create an article for my market of that topic, get inspired of what
Yeah.
other units are doing. Those are
Yeah.
some
No, those are
ideas.
great. Those are great. What's your take on having a content governance evangelist? Because to me, when I was leading some of these projects, a lot of my time was spent on educating
Mhm.
the audience and on being an evangelist, right? Trying to convince them through examples, through real world
Mhm.
examples, why this is the way to move forward. So what's your take on that? I mean, what do you tell companies? Do you suggest that they have this evangelist person, or do you
I
see many companies having that already?
I don't do directly. I don't tell them or say you should have this, because sometimes when I speak with them, they think they have other problems that are minor. No, I think content governance is the solution for perhaps the challenges they are sharing with me, plus the future ones. Okay, but I totally agree. I think the more companies or organizations get conscious of this need of sitting down, reflect, and put down ideas for that governance, probably then there would be less need of having a person dedicated to that. But for now, while it's not that common, and especially it's not that understood, the need to invest time and efforts on it, I think it's crucial. But on the other side, it will be a matter of trying to share these stories of success or stories of failure that content governance could have saved from.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. And it could
yeah.
be a shared responsibility. So
Yes.
it's maybe you're a content strategist slash evangelist, right? That's what
Hmm.
I was doing. I was doing content architecting slash evangelizing, right?
Hmm.
So it's like I always tell companies, don't think that you have to have this person full time being that. It could be somebody that is a believer and understands it properly, doing something else, and be able to educate and evangelize this. Because it is a paradigm shift in the way of thinking, right? For everybody across the organization.
Yes, hopefully. Yes, today probably
Hopefully, I like how
doesn't.
you said that.
Probably today doesn't exist as a role, and not many companies might invest in having that as a role. But today I saw that PayPal has an open role for a content modeler. I haven't seen that before, like a specific role just dedicated
Right.
to build the content model and doing it right, and of course everything that goes around it. So yeah, maybe in several years, the idea of a content governance manager is there, with the idea of revisiting our governance with the time.
So how can we, or how can businesses maintain the uniqueness of each of these markets while still maintaining sort of brand consistency, right? Because you're going to have sort of every region will be very unique, right?
Mhm.
But you still want to maintain this. So, I mean, obviously, governance goes towards that, but it's to me, it seems like this would be a huge challenge for companies.
I think it is today. It is. um, I think they need to really understand what are those individual factors, no, for each of those markets or those regions. Often it comes with having local people working for
Mm,
the market to
right.
understand the market firsthand. That's, in my opinion, that's what works better.
Yeah.
But yeah, understanding how the market works, how the brand is looked, or what's the position in that market, and then respect that. Um, there's we have, for example, we work with IKEA, and they have, of course, presence in many
All
markets
over the
and
world. Yeah.
all over the world. We all know them and use them. And one characteristic they do is that they want to encourage the production of singular content for the markets.
Mm,
They had like a ratio in their minds of a percentage of content that could be global, but then a much higher percentage of content that comes from each of the local markets. And then they have these dashboards where they can measure how much they have created in each of them, and then I guess they compare themselves, and they feel proud of it, and then they copy some of those strategies here and there, and the articles that work well, and all that.
yeah.
I just brought that example to say that it's not that the preeminent idea is that the global content should be the most the prominent. It doesn't have to be like that. Okay, we can respect and give a lot of autonomy to the markets to be themselves, and just provide what all those guidelines and all the generic content that any way they were producing it as in the name of the brand. But this way, if we do it at a corporate level, at a
Right.
global level, we save them from duplicating, each of them having their own copy and their own version of it. And then, as we said before, it will help a lot when we need to update that content.
Definitely. Zoe, we're almost done. I do want to ask, all of this, we don't know if it works or if it doesn't unless we have some KPIs, right? I mean, companies need to somehow figure out what are some of these KPIs that at a minimum, and I understand that honestly, every company, it'll be different, what their needs are and what they're looking at. But give us some examples of KPIs they should be thinking about that they need to track to make sure this is working or not, or be able to use those KPIs to adjust.
Mm. One common one is the time that it takes you to produce content today. Because if you have reflected on workflows, try to improve them, it's very easy to see if it's taking me 3 weeks until we had the idea and then it's finally up, and then I even have to make some amendments to have the final version. Then that's it. Let's see what improvements we can do to reduce that time. Another one for those that are launching new experiences or campaigns, for example, that are kind of a copy of, a standard template, how long it's taking me to launch those, based on the fact that we already have standards. We have a
Right.
template, we have processes in place, etc. So launching those campaigns or launching to new markets or new products, measuring the more we launch, how shortened is the time to do that. And then for the time is money, no, is the
Yeah.
investment of the resources that we are involving in these launches.
And I would think that also tracking how long it takes you to adjust to changes is also a good KPI, right? It's like if the market, and then we know the market changes so quickly that we need to adjust, and tracking, I would think tracking that time as well is very important. If the market switched on us and it's taking us 2 months to make
Mhm.
those changes versus a day, right? It's a huge difference in the outcome that the company will gather from that.
Yes, very good idea.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, Zoe, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know I'm going to have you back here. I think we're doing a
Yes.
tutorial as well, which is great. Look for that coming up soon. If people want to get a hold of you, is that LinkedIn that you're showing on the screen the best way, or
Yes,
anything else
that's
you
the
want to give
best.
them?
That's probably the best way to find me.
Excellent. Zoe, I appreciate it. It's been really fun. I enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks a lot, Marcelo. I hope people find it interesting.
Oh, totally. Definitely. And thanks to the rest of you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Discover Headless Tech course. Stay tuned for many more interviews coming up and tutorials, like I mentioned with Zoe. And as always, if you want to get a hold of me, please feel free to email me, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. So we will see you on the next episode. Cheers.